Transylvania's sub-Carpathian landscapes are internationally famed for their beauty and incredible flora and fauna. With many areas now designated as Natura 2000 sites for their priceless biodiversity. Tragically, this is starting to change, with foreign companies coming in and buying up vast tracts of land from local people for intensive agriculture and cattle rearing. Until 15 years ago, you could ride a horse for hundreds of kilometers without encountering a fence. But now, thanks to government grants and big investment, the landscape is rapidly losing its ecological value and increasingly resembling the featureless farmlands of America or Western Europe. I've come to the Hârtibaciu Valley to meet a group of people who are fighting this trend, and to better understand the tension between perceived progress and the wholesale destruction of natural habitats.
So this landscape changed a bit since 15 years, when big agro-investment companies came and bought a lot of land in this valley and started to invest in cattle breeding. They fenced off big parcels, up to 500 hectares, for meat production.
As I understand it, this is a Natura 2000 site, isn't it?
Yeah, and especially this site here is especially protected for big carnivores. So, and in the management plan it says that permanent linear constructions should be avoided. Of course you can argue what is a permanent linear construction, but what I consider for a life of a bear or a carnivore, these fences live long enough to influence the behavior. So what we see, what is happening, is they move along the fences and try to cross, of course, because they still want to go in the other areas. And what happens is they go closer to the village.
So the fences are funneling the apex predators into the villages?
Yes, and especially in the last year we see that it's more and more damage to crops and also to cattle of the shepherds that are not using fences, that still have traditional herding with shepherds.
So they then have to start fencing, I guess, as well, because they're getting more and more bears coming onto their land.
This is exactly what you see happening. So here at this dinner, it's a local shepherd, and he also started to fence. He saw the example from this European model and started to change the traditional way here and adapt to these fences, also because the pressure is bigger. Yeah, at some point the risk is that everything gets fenced up and there will be no place anymore for these animals.
What do you say to people who are going to hear this and go, well, look, everyone wants burgers. Unless we educate people to be vegetarians, there's a need and that demand has to be met, and you've got to do this somewhere.
I think one of the big hopes when the EU subsidizes a lot this cattle, and there was this idea that beef cattle can be the future of the shoulders of the milk cattle because people can actually gain more money. Yeah. But what happened is that the whole development got past the local people, and just the big agro businesses were able to...
So this doesn't benefit the locals whatsoever, really, does it?
I mean, of course, they have some employees, but if you compare the number of employees compared to the area they work on, it's very small. Very small. And this is one of the saddest things of this area, because once everything is sold to big agribusinesses, there's no opportunity anymore for young farmers to get hold of the land, because they just cannot
because their parents have sold it and that's it.
Yeah. And also all the small parcels in time become very big, so they consolidate the land, and only big farmers can in the future buy a parcel that has 500 hectares.
Joe, thanks for meeting me all the way out here.
No problem. This used to be quite a main agricultural road that was serving the landscape arable mosaic that you still see behind us. But unfortunately, everything beyond us this way has become ranchland, much like you would see in Argentina. And this is what this area is becoming, like the rest of Western Europe that has gone through this agricultural intensification.
Yeah, you can see that from a biodiversity point of view, that's dead.
Yeah, there's one species of plant in there. And you look around us here, how many can you see? And they're allowed to flower, they're allowed to get to a height, they're cut in the traditional way. And then it promotes the biodiversity of the plants, of the insects, which then feeds on to the birds, the mammals, and the landscape in general.
Why is this so important to protect these Natura 2000 sites?
Well,
Because this is progress.
Well, it's progress, but it's not progress and development for the local people. It's a foreign investment company that's developing. The landscape isn't progressing, the local communities aren't progressing. And it's important that the locally, traditionally managed ways continue, because that's what created the biodiversity here in the first place.
Is it actually illegal, or are they allowed to do this?
Much of what's happening here is illegal by national law. For example, they have huge piles of manure that they dump in the interdiction period, so in the banned period over winter, when there's a lot of water and the chemicals leach into the soil and the water.
And the river systems.
Yeah, and the river systems. And they're doing that in mass scale. And they're not allowed to do that at all as a large-scale farmer. Only small-scale farmers are allowed to put manure on their fields.
Have you seen evidence of this?
Yeah, we've reported it to the authorities, and the authorities had to react, and they asked them to move it. And these companies know. They've come from Western Europe where they know these things are banned.
Does Natura 2000 mean anything at all if we are witnessing intensive cattle grazing and agriculture within its borders? I mean, what's the point in having a Natura 2000 site?
Unfortunately, it's quite a weak framework for protected areas.
But it's being regulated in other countries.
There are good examples of where it's worked, and it can work, but it needs the support of local authorities, national authorities, and people to enforce the regulations that are there. We now have a federation, and the idea of that is to have a more official platform to act on, to involve the local associations, the local organisations that are concerned about this development. And through that federation, you can lodge complaints, you can talk to the authorities, you can talk to local government about how we, as a federation, as a community that lives in this landscape, would like this landscape to develop. And it's only by complaining to the authorities that they will get their head out of the sand.
A slippery drive up another dirt track took me to a panoramic view and a shocking example of crazy fencing. Here, a whole forest has been boxed in, including any larger wildlife that inhabits it. To get an idea of how aggressive modern farming impacts local people, I arranged to meet farmer and tour guide Mihai Barbu, who has come to inspect one of his small holdings in Bargiș County.
So this is your land?
It's a little portion of the land I have in this area.
You were telling me that an agro business has dumped all this manure on your land, is that right?
Yeah, it dumped some manure probably in the winter or last year, and I notified them on an email the 21st of March to remove it. And they said that they will and everything will be fine. And I specifically told them that it's my land and I have my crop on it. And then now I come and see, I put some oats for the horses, and it's maize now. They didn't answer to the notification.
So you then sowed it?
I just have a phone call, and they said that they will remove the manure.
Which they haven't done?
Which they haven't done, obviously.
But you seeded it once you found it ploughed and you put your oats in.
Yeah, well, after the ploughing you have to prepare the land, and then I did some oats on it, and then...
So you planted this entire strip of land with oats?
Yeah.
And now they've gone and put corn over the top?
Yeah, so probably before the oats was out, they came and sprayed it, and the oats is dead, of course. And also the end of my land is also fenced.
Yeah, you can see a fence going down
Yeah,
there.
so it's also, my land goes inside the fence for 800 square meters, just at the top end. It's too late to seed something else, so I have to go and declare my land other crop that I originally declared.
So you declare that as your corn now?
Yeah, I have to change it.
But they'll then probably come and harvest it?
That's who's first. probably.
Okay, so it's a race to see who gets the crop
So,
first.
yeah, exactly. Gets the crop
You
first.
should not let them have it, because
Yeah, I know.
this seems like strong-arm tactics. If they're doing this to you, imagining they're doing it to a lot of people, and it's
Yes,
quite intimidating to see this.
It's already a system, I imagine, you know, so they already know all the legal gates to go in between. And I know another case, a friend of mine, which is almost in the same situation, and is with 100 hectares, not with one. It was a tactic that there was lots of abandoned places, you know, lands, and then they did this tactic, and then because they didn't know the owner, who was the owner,
Yeah,
so
they
instead
just
of
wait for
looking,
someone to complain.
exactly, instead of looking for the owner, actively going to Primăria and look for the register, and then, you know, they just going to the land, and if somebody came, you know, and asked for the rights, oh, but why don't you, you know, let's make a deal.
The other thing I wanted to ask you about is your tourism business. That's been affected, hasn't it?
Well, I cut the routes with facing south. On this side, I used to go through Benești and Alțâna. We had a nice
Routes
stop for riding.
For riding. So
like bridle path, yeah.
So you do horse riding holidays?
Yeah, so in 2018, was everything festival was from 1 month to the other. I remember that I've done a trip, and then 1 month later I couldn't pass. I used to be the historical road between Benești and Alțâna, the old carriage roads. And then, of course, it was a gate there, but I didn't know on the other side it was a gate. And more than that, I couldn't like hazard with the horses to go with 5 clients and, you know, 7 horses to go inside.
Getting charged by a bull. So it's really compromised your activity.
I gave up to these southern tours, yeah.
So this is what we must now define as a protected area. Hundreds of miles of electric fence. You can hear it popping in the background. A monoculture, protected from insects, protected from biodiversity, bird life, protected from bears. So you can grow enough crops to feed thousands of cattle that graze these lands. And you can see the effect. To Western Europeans, this looks normal. We're used to this because we've done the damage already. It may be too late for us in England, Spain, Germany, France, but Romania still has the greatest biodiversity in Europe. And if we don't do something to protect it now, we're going to be going down the same road, and it will be too late. I think the local people will suffer, even though they may not know it now. They won't find tourists coming here to enjoy landscape because it's going to be flat and unexceptional, and there'll be nothing to see. And they won't be able to buy land because the price of land has got so high now that it's prohibitive. Let's hope that everybody wakes up in time.
With evening approaching,